On Australia Day long weekend, 1987, a man named Richard Madrill got on his motorbike at his grandmother's house in Cremorne, Sydney, Australia, and drove across town to the suburb of Pymble, where he shot and killed 4 young girls. Richard had been brutalised his whole life. He'd been regularly and savagely beaten, humiliated, scorned, told he was stupid, useless, would never amount to much, and so on. A few years later, on the other side of the globe, another little boy, 6-year-old Derek Clark, was abandoned on the steps of a psychiatric hospital by his mother and stepfather. The hospital took him in and he was diagnosed with psychosexual confusion, ADHD, erratic detachment disorder. He was developmentally delayed and at 6 could not walk downstairs without falling as he had no fine or gross motor skills. He didn't understand words like cat or dog, which led to a further diagnosis of mental retardation and an IQ of a 2-year-old. Like Richard, Derek had also suffered absolutely horrific childhood abuse. Fast forward to now, and Richard is still in jail, whilst Derek is an incredibly successful and inspiring motivational speaker, going by the name of Rapping Dad. So what happened that enabled Derek to move past all the trauma and labels of his childhood to a life of incredible inspiration and success, whilst Richard ended up destroying the lives of so many people, including his own? Well, Derek ended up in the foster system, where one of the families that took him in recognised he had been a product of his environment. They saw deeper than the labels and knew that if they gave him the love and understanding he needed, he would thrive. And he did. And Richard, well, he didn't find that loving home or supportive environment. His self-esteem was completely battered. There was no joy, no hope. His decision-making abilities were completely clouded, making one poor decision after another, spiralling further and further down to that fateful day. So who am I and why am I recording this video? Well, Richard Madrill is my brother. You see, I knew way back then, when Richard committed his crime, that it never would have happened if he hadn't been subjected to the abuse he received as a child. We all suffered, but he suffered the worst. Now, I know you might look at me and think, well, you're okay, and I am, thank you. But I wasn't. For many, many years, I wasn't. We were incredibly disruptive children. The minute we were out of our father or housekeeper's care, we would go crazy. I was a nightmare at school. We all were. Richard tried to burn his school down. I was busy getting into fights, shoplifting, smoking, truancy, and causing absolute havoc in the classroom. While the common thought of the day was we were looking for attention, I realise now that's quite a naive way of thinking. It was actually much deeper than that. I literally had no control over my behaviour back then, and a part of me, which I now recognise was my nervous system, would completely take over, emotionally spasming for want of a better word, even though another part of me knew I would get into trouble, knew that I didn't want to be this person. The 30 years since has been a journey of recovery, and I'm very happy to say that, like Derek Clark, I'm out the other side, empowered and committed to empowering and supporting others to know that there is a way forward. I now work with people living with the symptoms of childhood abuse, PTSD, anxiety, depression, and so on. And you really don't need me to tell you that these conditions are pandemic. Our jails are overflowing with people that we really don't know what to do with. We have children as young as 8 self-harming or attempting suicide. That should just be unfathomable, so it is evident that help is needed. I mean, this problem appears monstrous, and everything we throw at it is really just a band-aid and has little, if any, long-term effect. So how do we fix this? Well, like some monstrous problems, the solution can sometimes be actually very simple and sitting right in front of us. We stem the flow. You see, we're on a leaking ship that's sinking, and we're trying to bail out without closing up the gaping holes, which are our children. There's a wonderful African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. But the reality is, it also takes a village to destroy a child. And we are that village. And in a village, the place where children learn is in school. Children need to be taught how to care for themselves, how to care for each other, and how to ask for help, and learn how to have their most basic needs met, those of safety, connection, feeling cared for, kindness and respect. School is the only place our children spend a significant amount of time outside their family environments. It is vital we start teaching our children to be emotionally competent and agile. And I believe the Positive Living Skills Initiative provides us with the opportunity to implement this immediately. It is a very robust and well thought out program based on 40 years of research, aimed not just to support children, but to assist their families and their educators. The schools currently implementing this program are having extraordinary results within a few short weeks. It is a whole school approach initiative, and the programs have been designed with teachers in mind, fully prepared and ready to implement, giving them a common language for how to teach emotional well-being. It is completely mapped to the early years learning framework and the Australian curriculum, with ready-to-deliver learning experiences, audios, story templates, and so on. As a society, we put so much emphasis on success, and especially academic success. But true academic achievement, and in fact true societal success, can only be achieved with emotional competency and agility. Think about this for just a minute. If this was implemented in 2020 across a whole school community or communities, then by 2021, those Year 6 children will be starting high school. The first wave of children who would be on their way to emotional agility and competency. Then next year, the next flow of emotionally healthy children will be starting high school, and so on. In 9 short years, the children that began this program in early childhood will be ready for high school. Think of the flow-on effect into society of children who have been taught how to be kind, how to respect themselves and others, how to build their self-confidence and a healthy level of self-esteem. What do you think could happen to the youth suicide rates, bullying, drug, alcohol and gaming addictions, quite apart from academic achievement? You see, if this program had been implemented years ago, my brother might have been able to learn how to cope or to get more support. And those girls, like the millions of other victims of horrific crimes, would still be alive. Because people who have had childhoods like my brother and who don't learn emotional intelligence are at high risk to do you or your loved ones damage. And if the adults in our early lives had learned these skills at school, we would never have suffered the cruelty and abuse we experienced. Please, stand beside me. Let's create a movement and bring change to the lives of our children and the world at large. Help us to get this implemented Australia-wide and nurture and grow the biggest asset of any country, our children.